Here we go again, guys. Now we are back. Today, we're going to start with the Declaration of Independence. We have liberated Boston in 1776. The Declaration is going to happen in 1776. All the time up until then, we've been trying to fix it. We realize now it is not going to work. So the Second Continental Congress needs somebody to write this. And we know, if you're looking at your notes, Thomas Jefferson is the man who writes it. So first off, they go and ask John Adams. Not Thomas Jefferson. They ask John Adams. John Adams' response is perfect. John Adams says, no, I will not do it. I will help with it, but I'm a jerk and too many people don't like me. And John Adams was exactly correct. He was one of the, you ever met that person that's so honest they're annoying? Like, does my breath stink? Yes, it smells like dead fish. You're like, oh my word. That's John Adams. And John Adams knows this, and he knows that if he is the one who writes it, there may be one or two people that just don't like him enough. They're not going to vote for it regardless, just because it was John Adams who wrote it. So, Thomas Jefferson wrote it. Now they didn't have John Adams. They go and ask Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin says no. He says, listen, I've done a lot with this stuff. I can do other things. He says, but there's somebody here smarter than me. There is a guy here who is just a genius. And you haven't got to know him yet because he's young and he's just started here. He's a 33-year-old named Thomas Jefferson. And he says, that's the man you need to talk to. They go and ask Jefferson, and he says, yes, he'll write the Declaration. The Declaration is basically a breakup letter. It's going to have the reasons we're trying to leave England. It is, it's the breakup letter is what it is. And so Thomas Jefferson actually locks himself in a room for about a month and a half. And they said all he did was play the violin, read the Bible, work on the Declaration. He gets it to where he thinks it's perfect. And if you ever see the original one, dude had it. It is eloquent. It is amazing. And then Ben Franklin and John Adams get back together with him, and they start taking lines out, changing words, doing things. There was a point Jefferson was literally in tears. Because if you ever read the Declaration of Independence and it starts out, all men are created equal, it would roll perfectly if you knew what Jefferson wrote. Because do you know what the second line in it that was removed? Jefferson talks about all men are created equal. And then he talks about we're going to be the first country that starts that and believes that we'll be the first country where there will never be slavery. And there's actually in a line in the Declaration about slavery is abolished starting in this country. We're never going to have it. Benjamin Franklin and John Adams tell him that Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina will not sign on if they think they're going to lose their slaves. And they make him take that out. It's quite interesting. And you want to know one of the reasons it's kind of brings Jefferson to tears? His wife, the person he's with, they're not technically married, I'll explain to you later, is an African-American. Most people didn't know that by our third president, we had a mixed couple in the White House. It kind of shocks people right there, especially when they talk about the white colonist and the white thing. No, we started with a mixed couple by our third president. That's why he's a little bit upset about this. How are you going to look at your wife? And yeah, I know. It blows my mind that they took that out. What would that have done to America if they would have been able to leave that in? So Jefferson then, he does want it in there because it's an important issue at that time, but they leave it out for those three states. The letter, as you know from your notes, literally tells George he's an unfit ruler and he's got to go. They send this letter off. I want you to get this. This is a very, very high treasonous letter to write. It is literally telling the people in charge, we don't want to be with you anymore. Then we're leading up to the July 4th date of this. What happens on July 4th? We all know that's when we celebrate independence. Yay! So what happens? July 1st, they get together and they discuss it once it's been edited and everything like that. It's a whole day of discussion. July 2nd, they get together, they discuss it for about half the day, and then they vote on it. And every colony votes yes, except for one. New York says no. They don't want to be part of that. Now it's 12-1, so they end up being part of it, but they voted no on this. So July 2nd, it's approved. John Adams says that same day, July 2nd will be a day that goes down in American history, a day that we celebrate from now until, end of times. Close. We're going to celebrate July 4th. So what happens on July 3rd? It goes to the printer. The copy that they send to the printer is called the fair copy. It only has 2 signatures on it. It's got the Declaration, but then it's got signature of Charles Thompson, the secretary, and John Hancock, the guy in charge of all this at this point. That's it. What happened to that copy? We don't know. We don't have any clue where that ended up. If anybody ever found it, it would be worth its weight in gold, if not more, because I can't imagine what our country would pay to have that back. What they do July 3rd then is all day long, they're printing copies of this. So if it's being printed July 3rd, what day are you going to put on it? It's not going to put July 3rd. You know it won't come out until July 4th. So at the top, they put the date July 4th. What happens on July 4th? It gets passed out. That's all that happened on July 4th. But because that's the date that's on the document, that's the day we end up celebrating, which is quite ironic that nothing really happened that day. The 200 copies that they send to all the other printing presses around the colonies and everything, those are called the fair copies. They have found 26 of the 200. A lot of people, when they got this, the printers that are printing this and stuff, they were scared because you've literally got a treasonous document in your hands. You have two options: hide it or burn it, get rid of it. Some probably did get rid of it, but I think everybody else saw the significance and probably hid some. That's why slowly over time, people have found, when the last one was found was around 2000, a lady went to a yard sale. She bought a $4 painting because she liked the frame. She wanted to get the painting out and put her own painting in and everything. So when she went home, she pulled it apart. And because people were hiding them back then, it was an old frame from the 1700s. And behind it was one of the fair copies. She turned around and sold it for $8 million. So pretty good deal. And she got to keep the frame she bought for $4. So, hey, worked out pretty good for her. So I would love to find a fair copy out there. It'd be worth whatever you can get out of it. But it's quite interesting. That's how that day goes down in history. So that brings us to, all these are printed out, August the 2nd. That's the day they're signed. 1776. That's the day you're going to see the signatures on it. Now, I know some of you have all seen the National Treasure, and on the National Treasure, they say there's something hidden on the back of the Declaration. And they say there's a treasure map involved with the Declaration. Are either of those true? Yes. Yes, they are. There is a treasure map involving the Declaration. That doesn't come about until the 1880s. A newspaper receives a letter, and in the letter is 3 pieces of paper of nothing but numbers. What it is a man by the name of Thomas Jefferson Beale. That is a fake name. We know that now because there is no Thomas Jefferson Beale that we could find in history, but you'll understand why when you hear how they solved it. So Thomas Jefferson Beale is the name of the paper, and he says he wants people to be renewed in history, and then he tells a story. He says he was hunting with a friend. They came across a cave that was filled with gold. They took the gold, reburied it in another spot. Then they wrote out this cipher, hard to crack code, and if you can crack it, the first one will tell you how much is in it. The second one will tell you where it's buried. The third one will tell you what he thinks you ought to do with all that money. For 30 years, no one cracks it. Can't figure it out. It's just a series of numbers. Finally, 30 years later, somebody gets the idea. It's a renewed interest in history, and the name is Thomas Jefferson Beale. He takes the Declaration and numbers off the letters, like number 1, number 2, number 3, and then starts putting those in, and you can use it, and it actually tells you how much gold is. They found $65 million worth of gold in 1880. I cannot imagine what that's worth. Some people think it was from the Confederate gold. Some people think it was pirate gold. Whatever, they found gold. So there is a treasure map using the Declaration. Now, the other two, it does not follow with the Declaration right there. Did they use other writings of Thomas Jefferson? We don't know. Or did they use other historical documents? We don't know. It is so hard to crack because if you use a document like that, you could have 4 different numbers for the letter A or 5 different numbers for the letter B, which means you don't have to repeat that, which makes the pattern nearly impossible to break. But we're pretty sure you got to use something historical to figure it out. Has anybody figured it out since then? Nope. People have been trying and trying and trying, and no one's got that far. All right. So there is a treasure map. Is there something hidden on the back? Yes, there is. And that will happen on August the 2nd, 1776. If you know what's going on, they're signing the paper saying, hey, We are breaking away from you and we are starting our own country. It's kind of like if you send a letter to the office saying, Dr. Deputy, Mr. Scrimshire, we're going to make our own school. We're leaving you. Stay out of this building. We've got our own stuff going on over here. Guarantee you before the day's over, he's showing up to your room, isn't he? And he's not happy. We just sent a letter to our boss, England, that said, hey, we're breaking away from you. You can guarantee they're showing up and they're not happy. The people who sign this are going to be hunted down. And in fact, I've done a study on it before. It's quite interesting. I did it when I was in 4th, 5th grade, showing the kids. Almost every one of these people have their houses burned down because those are the people England's looking for when they come over. There is no insurance in this day and age. Those people just lost everything. Most of them are not going to make it through the war before they're hunted down and killed. A good chunk of them, it's like a fourth of them, are going to lose their families because they would kill and murder their families when they found them. One man is actually going to be tied up. They're going to torture his wife and children in front of him and then behead them in front of them before they kill him. So that's the last thing he saw. These guys know this when they're signing this paper. They're doing this knowing that if they sign this, we get liberty, but they're going to pay for it. And so I can't imagine what their heart is just beating out of their chest as they're going forward to sign their name on it. And if you know what order the names were signed in, you can see the first like 2 or 3 are small written. And then all of a sudden, a man by the name of John Hancock goes up front. And if you ever look at it, you'll see it here in a couple pages, signs his name really big, dead in the center, John Hancock. And when he got done, he said, King George can read that without his glasses. That's bold. He realizes King George is going to come. He's going to kill whoever this is. Let me make my name clear, George. It's John Hancock. Bring it on. That is a statement. That's why still to this day, you'll hear people talk about your signature and say, put your John Hancock on that. And that means to put your signature on it. There's a Hancock insurance, and it has a quill as the symbol. Once again, going back to John Hancock. So signing the Declaration, it's an act of treason, but they went ahead and did it. If you look at the next picture after that, you will see one of the Beale papers that is nothing but numbers, and you can see the Declaration and the 3 guys, supposedly 3, we're about to find out, that worked on this. That brings us to the next thing, common sense, which is what they don't have at Sweet Plains. I meant they don't have the book. That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant at all. Okay, common sense. It is a book. It's a pamphlet. It's in between a book and a newspaper type size. It is done by Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine is a tax collector in England. And when Ben Franklin goes over there to help repeal the stamp tax, he goes before Parliament, he talks to the king, and he gets it repealed. While he's over there, he runs into this guy and ends up hanging out with him named Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine is a genius, and Ben Franklin sees it, tells him, if you ever want to come to Philadelphia, here's a piece of paper saying, everybody will take care of you. Come find me. That's in 1772. 1774, Thomas Paine's going to take him up on it. So T. Paine jumps on a boat, comes over to Philadelphia, finds Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin gives him a printing press and a business to go with it. So, I mean, imagine you show up and they just give you something like the Hardys when you show up at Madisonville. It'd be pretty nice. That says you're welcome. Very good to have you here. So T. Paine starts the Pennsylvania Magazine, one of the first magazines in America, and it's being published by him. Then 1775, he takes a year off and just writes. Gets all these thoughts down on paper. January 10th, 1776, he publishes Common Sense. I want you to understand, remember, most people, they own the Bible and that's it. You do not own any other books. Books are too expensive. I mean, it would be like today's age. To buy a copy of Common Sense will be like $500 in today's age. No one looks at their family and says, we're not going on vacation because I need to buy a book. That says a lot about this book of how rapidly it's going to sell. January 10th, 1776, he publishes 1,000 copies. Sells out in 3 days. 3 days. And enough people have went, I'll spend a week's salary on that. I've never seen, except for in 1997, a book like when Harry Potter came out, take the world by storm to where people were talking about it. For this to be what it is, people are going to have to be going, look at this, look at these lines. You're going to have a piece of homework paper you have to do here in a little bit that breaks down those lines. Every one of his sentences is a mic drop. I mean, it's raining mics is what it's doing when he does this. 1,000 sold in 3 days. He has a printing press. What does he do? He prints 120,000 copies. To know a first edition, it doesn't have his name on it. Those are worth millions if you ever found one of the 1,000 that were originally printed. The next 120,000 say Thomas Paine on them. When they print out the 120,000, that should be enough to last you a lifetime. Sells out in 3 months. He has to print them again. Sells out. Print them again. Sells out. By 6 months, 1 out of 2 people in the United States have a copy of Common Sense. That should boggle your mind that is going on like that. It's up there with the Bible and how important it is to these people at this time. And it is, I kid you not, when you do the homework, it is just so amazing, the words that are in it and everything. So after that, it's published out. It goes out to everybody. It will do more to cause patriots than almost anything out there. What happens then is, go back to August the 2nd. Remember, I said something weird happens that day. They're all signing it. And what happens is, remember we mentioned John Adams and Ben Franklin helping Thomas Jefferson? There was actually a third person helping Thomas Jefferson when he rewrote it. That would be Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was there at the Second Continental Congress. They're helping write it. And on August the 2nd, when they have the copy that everybody's signing, they look at Thomas Paine and say, you can't sign it. If you sign it, there'll be people that don't vote for it. And Thomas Paine got mad. He's like, I've worked hard on some of this. I've been with y'all. What do you mean I can't sign it? And they said, there's a couple reasons. First, you're English. Second, you're a tax collector. There would be some who didn't sign it because of that. But the third reason is the big one. He's an atheist, and an open atheist. Now, today that's more common, but 1776 ain't nobody an atheist. Very few and far between. For him to just openly say there is no God, pretty much Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, none of those states are going to sign it if you have an atheist signature on the front of the Declaration. They'll read his book because it's amazing, but they don't want his name on our freedom. At this point, Thomas Paine's a little upset. They say that he got some ink put on his hand as he's talking with everybody, and then he walks over to the Declaration and slammed his hand down on the back of it and said, there, now my handprint's on it for eternity, and you can't get rid of that. So is there something hidden on the back of the Declaration? Yes. If you go back to the pictures of the Beale papers in the Declaration, bottom left corner, you can see a handprint, and that is the back of the Declaration. So yes, it has got a treasure map to do with it, and yes, it does have something hidden on it, but not like Disney does with that. Does that make sense then? All right. We will pick up there on the next day so we can finish up. Thank you.